Hello everybody. Tonight we're going to be working on some fun stuff here in web project management, or at least I consider it fun, but I also kind of consider it an essential skill in a lot of different ways. When you guys are working on a project, very often either the client or yourself will decide that WordPress is a good option for deploying it. So my focus here tonight in this class is to walk through downloading and installing WordPress on the school server so that you can have a test environment in which you can experiment. And once you see what the process is for this, I want you to also keep in mind that if you can do multiple WordPress installations, you don't have to do just one. So it's a chance to really experiment and to work in a space that's separate from your project and not have to destroy anything. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to point you to this WordPress folder that I have off here to the left. And as I mentioned a little earlier in class tonight, there's a bunch of information here, and it's really kind of an amalgamation of information that I've gathered from teaching various courses, probably including this one in different incarnations. So I walk through the process of making sure that you have a database, making sure you can get to a command prompt, making sure that your account works, downloading, unzipping, uploading, configuring, and connecting WordPress, and then finally getting to the point where you can get logged in and actually do some stuff. Right, so it's a bunch of different steps all put together. Now the first thing that I will mention is the stuff that's on this page all focuses on instructions for connecting to Kronos, which was our previous web server. Our new web server is Apollo, and Apollo is accessible through this URL, which is apollo.gtc.edu. This is just simply the front end of the site. So the one thing that you might want to attempt in your browsers just real quick is just connecting to the server and just making sure you can establish a connection. And I know a lot of you, I'm looking around the room, you're working on some are working on your own machines and some are working on school machines. Okay. So I'm trying to keep that in mind as I work. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our accounts are working. Okay? So the first thing is I'm going to have you guys bring up FTP program. Our preference here, and the one that we usually recommend to students, is FileZilla. Now I swear I just clicked that button, but it does not seem to be loading. One more time. So now I'm going to have 3 instances of it coming up. So I think my machine is just being a little bit slow because I just booted. So let's give it a second to respond. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to have 3 instances of FileZilla coming up. And you think I'm kidding, see? It responded to all my mouse clicks. It just took a while. All right. So to connect, just to refresh here in the host window, you can just type apollo.gtc.edu, the username that you were assigned, and your password. Now, one little change that we've had, and this will diverge a little bit from the instructions that you see on our course shell right now. The instructions for FTPing to Kronos are essentially the same in terms of connection, but where you land within your folder structure is different. So with Kronos, most of our previous web servers, you would land in the root of your home directory. So in other words, on our machine, there's a folder called Home, and inside the Home folder is one folder for each account. So whatever your account name is, that's the name of your folder. Inside that folder in the root will be a bunch of configuration files that are typically hidden from the user. They're prefaced with a dot. The dot indicates in a Unix or a Mac file system that the file is not to be visible in a normal view, but if you go into an advanced view, you can usually see those. Another folder that exists in the root of your account, in the root of your home directory, is a folder called public HTML. Previous instructions for Kronos would place you in the root of your folder structure, and you would have to navigate into public HTML and then drop your files in there. This time we decided, and actually I wasn't the one who decided, but I went with it, we decided that basically we will drop you right into that public HTML folder. So whatever you put in the root here, so in other words, if I put an index file right here in the root, it will be directly visible on the web. So why don't we go ahead and just very quickly just create a really quick little file, and I'm just going to type hello. And yes, I'm not doing any HTML, but I'm just trying to keep it simple on purpose. So I still need to call it index.html, even though there's no HTML in it, just to make it fast. Dropping it on my desktop. And then on the left-hand side of FileZilla here, I am going to navigate to my desktop, find that index.html file, and drop it in the root of my directory. Now I'm going to switch over to my web browser, and I'm going to append to the end of the URL my user account and just press enter. Now, those of you that have done this before, and I'm keeping in mind here, this is a 4th semester class, so you guys really all should have done this before. Make sure you put the tilde in. So it's apollo.gtc.edu / the sideways squiggle and your username. And if you followed along, then you should be able to access your file just like this. Okay, so this is kind of a necessary first step. You guys should all know how to do this. It should not be new, and it should not be difficult for you. It should be second nature at this point. Okay, so all right, so that allows us to confirm that your account is working, that you can FTP files to your account. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring up a command prompt to connect to the system. So on most of your machines, if you're using a school machine, you will have a piece of software installed called PuTTY. And I'm looking to see if I have PuTTY actually installed. Here I do. So find it either on your start menu or hit the start key and just start typing PuTTY. It should come up. School machines it will for sure. If for some reason you don't have PuTTY on your machine, bring up a browser, go to putty.org, and notice that, yeah, this is their website, just a few simple entries. Click on that link. It'll take you to the secondary page, and then you would find PuTTY. And you know what I usually do, PuTTY is just one standalone executable file. I grab either the 32-bit or the 64-bit, and frankly, it does not matter, and download it directly and run it on your system. Sometimes computers don't like downloading of exe files directly and will block you. Your antivirus might block you or give you all sorts of warnings. If that's the case, then you might want to opt for one of the Windows installers that are at the top here, but that's up to you. All right, so if you're in the process of downloading PuTTY and installing it, you should probably pause the video for a second while you do that. If you happen to have PuTTY on the machine and you are ready to go to the next step, let's do that. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to just type the name of the computer we're connecting to, which is apollo.gtc.edu. One little caveat I'm going to make here as a mention, because I always forget that I do have people that use Macintosh machines and use Linux machines. I have both of those in this class session that use those as a preference. If you're on a Macintosh, you will bring up your terminal program and you will type the command SSH space your username at apollo.gtc.edu. I believe that's the command. And Brian, you could verify that. The same procedure is true if you're working from a Linux system. You would once again bring up a terminal program, type in that same command, SSH space username at apollo.gtc.edu. Now, PuTTY, in essence, gives us the ability to have a Linux command line within a Windows environment because it does not natively exist. So here's what we're going to do. We type the host name up there and make sure that our protocol connection type is set to SSH. That's the method for login. And then you just go ahead and click open. You will get a prompt screen like this, and you will log in with your username. Press enter, and then you will type your password. From this Linux command prompt, you do not see an echo back of the password with hidden characters. So just trust the fact that it's actually being entered and press enter when you're done. If you are successful, you will see a screen that looks like this. Now, at this point in your academic career, being that we're in the 4th semester, it is assumed that you've done advanced PHP and PHP and a bunch of other courses, and that you've done these steps. You've probably worked with PuTTY before. You've probably worked with databases and simple command line things. One thing I do want to mention is that we don't have a traditional hosting environment set up here on campus. We have what I would consider a raw hosting environment, meaning that you have the capability to launch and host pages and do a lot of things that Linux servers can do, but we don't provide the control panel interface like you guys get from a commercial host that gives you like icons to click on to get to the tools and gives you like windowed environments or browser environments in which to do the changes. But if you can get to an SSH prompt related to your account on our server, you can do things such as change your password. So if you're curious about changing a password, you can do it here from this prompt. I will note though that your database password, which I did set to be the same password that you have for your account, it needs a separate process for changing the password. But you can do that from this prompt as well once you get into the MySQL monitor program, which we're about to do. So just very quickly, PuTTY being the command line, there's certain things you can do here. So for example, I'm going to type a simple command, pwd, which stands for print working directory, and then you can see the output, and I know it's really small on my screen here. It shows that we're in the home directory in my user account. Now, if you remember from the FTP program, that's not where we landed. We landed one folder deeper than that. So I'm going to type another command, ls space, and actually just type ls for right now, and you'll notice that the ls is basically the list command. It shows like the contents of the folder that you're in. And you can see from relative to the root of my account, there's a folder called public HTML there. And this isn't a very useful view. So one command that's really kind of nice to know from a command line is ls-al or LA, it doesn't matter what order you put them in, they're just command line switches. And what it does is a little bit more verbose output. So now it shows you that you can access the root directory and the above directory, that you have several hidden files. Notice how we didn't see those before because they have a dot in front of them. That means they're not visible in typical file view, but with the AL switches, you can see the hidden files. This is true on a Macintosh as well as it is on the PC or Linux system. We can see that public HTML is a folder, and you can tell because the very first character over here on the left is the letter D, which indicates directory. The other letters that follow, the R, W, X, are read, write, and execute on 3 levels: for the owner of the file, for the group of users, and for the public. And there's different permission sets, and we're going to learn about that real shortly here. So just type really quickly cd space public _ HTML, press enter. So now we've changed directories. You can verify that by doing pwd again. So you can see that I'm in a different folder. And then you can type the ls command again, ls space -al. And now you can see the same files I was seeing in FileZilla. So just very rudimentary Linux commands. And you don't have to become an expert at Linux command line. I certainly am not, even though I've worked with it for many years. If I forget how to do something, I just go to Google and like, how do I blah, 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 type it in and find something. There are people that when they work with these systems every day, they get really, really sharp with them. So, all right, next step is we are going to log into MySQL, and we're doing that from a prompt. All right, the reason for this is basically because from the phpMyAdmin program, you guys do not have permissions to create databases from that graphical interface. That's by intent for security reasons. All right. So the only way that you guys can create a database on Apollo is from the command line. Or have me do it. Right? All right, so here we go. I'm going to type the command clear. Guess what that does? Clears the screen. And then I'm going to type in MySQL space -u, your username, space -p. So one more time. MySQL space -u, space your username, space -p. The -u indicates that you're entering your username, and the -p indicates you're going to enter the password. You can, if nobody's looking over your shoulder, you can actually type the password right here in plain text, like this, or whatever it happens to be. Not recommended, though. All right? So I'm going to press enter, and then I will be prompted for the password. Go ahead and enter it. Once again, it does not echo back false characters while you're typing in, but be rest assured that it is accepting your password. If you are successful, you will then get a welcome message from the program. The program is called MySQL Monitor. It's a command line way to access MySQL. And now my prompt has changed from a $, which is the bash prompt, to the MySQL prompt. What can you enter at the MySQL prompt? Any SQL commands. So all the stuff that you guys learned in advanced databases and PHP classes and whatever other classes you took, those commands can be entered here. It can be one line at a time. It can be an entire scripted statement. And that's all it takes. Now that everybody's connected up to MySQL and has a MySQL prompt, it's great. If you happen to get a message that says access denied for user and you're sure your password's right, you can always contact me to make sure that the password is set correctly, because we did have one here in the classroom where I just said it and apparently I mistyped it or something happened. All right, so now that we're at the MySQL prompt, we're going to do a really simple little command. Type the command show databases followed by a semicolon. I know that's very hard to read and I apologize. Normally I would make that much larger. And when you press enter, it's going to show a list of all the databases that are currently on our system. Now the task that you guys have is to actually create a database. And you're going to follow along with me to do this. Now, we have a convention on this system, and it's true for a lot of Linux-based PHP, MyAdmin, MySQL combos, that when we have a multi-user system, that your username and an underscore is always prefaced in your database name. So every database that belongs to you, if your name was John Smith and I gave you a J Smith account, you would then type in J Smith underscore and then the name of your database. And just to help make that clear, I'm going to bring up the WordPress page here, and I'm just going to zoom in on the commands, because basically at this point, we are going to take this particular step. And notice, as we do that, your username is going to be your username. You're not going to type username. Okay. I hope you guys figured that part out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and type the command. I'm going to type create database, my username, underscore, and since we're going to be working with WordPress, I might just call it WordPress, right? But in this case, I'm probably going to abbreviate it because over time I'm probably going to create many WordPress databases. So I'm just going to type WP1 and then put a semicolon at the end. Once you have that typed in, press enter, and if you've succeeded, you'll get a response that says query OK, 1 row affected. All right. I'm assuming, because I'm not seeing any hands fly up or any mumbling, grumbling, or whining, that we're all good. All right, so now we're going to switch back to our browser. And what I'm going to have you do at this point is I'm going to have you type the URL for our system, apollo.gtc.edu, and then follow it after the / with phpMyAdmin. Case is irrelevant, but all lowercase is preferred. phpMyAdmin is a PHP-based MySQL database tool. So this will give you a graphical way now to interact with your database if you need to.
Oh, so we just don't do that kind of stuff, and we just can't actually create the database.
That is correct, Jason. So this tool, and you should go ahead and put in your username and your password, will allow you to create your databases. If you successfully created a database, your database listing on the left-hand side of the screen should have this like orange colored icon there. If you have not, like Sabrina, I'm seeing that yours is not. You're not there yet? Okay. Which is fine. But if you look at mine, for example, you can see that my WordPress database there, you know, it's been created, but there's nothing inside it. There's no tables or anything like that. But you know what? That's fine. All we need is the database created so that when we install WordPress, it has somewhere to store its information. When you work with a commercial host, this process is automatic. You hit that one button, install WordPress, creates a database, you know, decompresses WordPress, connects the two together, presets the passwords, and you're all set to go. So all those processes are automatic. I'm going to tell you what, it is a useful thing to know how to do this manually. You know why? Because eventually you run into problems and you have to fix things, and this is, you know, a step towards that. All right, now that we're all good in accessing our database through phpMyAdmin, I'm assuming, we are now going to turn our attention over to WordPress. So I'm going to go back to my browser now, and I'm going to go to WordPress.org, not .com, and let me explain the difference. WordPress is a software platform, but it's also a blogging website. If you go to the .com site, that's where you go to set up a blog. If you go to .org, that's where you go to download the software, and that's where we're going. So WordPress.org. And then once you're on that page, really for Windows users, it's as simple as just clicking this button. If you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, you might want to click that and see if other options are available for you, or to see that if it auto-recognizes your system. But I'm seeing right here, if you're on a Mac or a Linux machine, you'll want to grab this file here, which you notice if you download WordPress, which I'm about to do, you'll notice that it comes down as a zip, right? If you're on a Linux or a Mac machine, not that they can't work with zip files, but they have their own compression formulas and algorithms and formats, and you want to grab the tar.gz. GZ stands for gzip. Okay, just in case you want to know. All right. It is also possible, if you wanted, you could do this work directly at a command line. You can go to a command line, FTP over to WordPress, download the tar.gz, because we're on the Linux system then, and then decompress it at the command line and skip the steps we're about to do. Most people aren't ready for those steps, but I would bet you we have at least one guy in the class, our Linux guy, who's definitely going to do it that way, because there are some superior reasons to do it that way. All right, once you do have the file downloaded, if you're using Chrome or whatever product it is, navigate to the location where that zip file is found. Once you have it found, go ahead and double click it, because we do need to decompress it before we upload it. So I'm on a Windows machine, so I'm going to go ahead and click Extract All and just kind of let it do its thing. Except I'm going to actually put it not in my Downloads folder. I'm going to decompress it to my desktop. So I'm selecting that folder, and then I'm going to hit Extract. Depending on your machine, this can take a little while. This is an i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and you can see it's going to take about 4 minutes according to this little chart to decompress. The reason for that is it's not really large in file size. If you notice, the download size is like 8.5 meg, but it's lots and lots and lots of little text files. And that there's a lot of overhead that goes with that. If it was like a video file or an image or something like that, that was 8 megs in size, I would decompress almost instantly. So it just shows you a little bit of overhead. So just be patient with this process and let it unzip. And I'm going to pause the video here while that's happening. All right, it's just about done decompressing here. And I know you guys have those old machines, I guess, but I do have my WordPress folder right here. Our next step is to take those decompressed files and now upload them to the Apollo server. So take note of where that decompressed folder is. So I'm going to navigate myself over to FileZilla, and I very deliberately put stuff on my desktop, because when you're working in FileZilla, and it's like in your user folder, your downloads folder, and like God knows where, it's a pain to navigate in here. So the nice thing about FileZilla is the desktop's always right at the top, right? And you can see right here my WordPress folder. I'm just going to grab it, drag it, and drop it right into the root of the Apollo server. Now it is uploading, looks like about 1,500 files. We are here on campus. The up speed, the upload speed here on campus, in most cases is usually faster than the download speed. So you will not be able to upload this fast at home unless you're really paying for some high bandwidth. Very, very unlikely. But that upload, I mean, that was like, what, 20 seconds? If that. All right. So I am once again going to pause the video. I want to make sure that everybody gets caught up to me, and then we'll proceed from there. One little tidbit, I was just walking around the room here to make sure that everybody's doing okay, and I had one student mention that they couldn't really connect to our old web server, Kronos, and now this new web server from a prompt from home, because you're remoting to home, correct? Mm-hmm. So if you are off campus, in order to be able to use a command line interface, you must use the VPN software first. If you need instructions for VPN, you can go to the Gateway main website and just type VPN and search for it. Or any one of my course shells, I usually have it embedded on the resources page. It's just a simple little piece of software from Cisco called the Cisco Anywhere Mobility Client. Gateway does not allow other clients to be connected, because most operating systems now have VPN built in, but it won't allow connection from those. It requires that specific client. So set up VPN to connect. You do not need VPN for FTP. You do need VPN for command line. That's done for security purposes. On many Linux servers, though, I will give you this little preemptive warning. Many times, commercial hosts will not give you command line access at all, because it's a point of attack. Okay. Okay, now that you have WordPress located there, I mean, you could take a few moments, if you wish, to go into the folder structure and kind of explore. But it's basically the same thing that you're seeing on your hard drive. And we are going to have to work with this a little bit before we get it to run. First thing we need to do in the installation process is actually navigate to that folder through a browser. So you can just type apollo.gtc.edu, and then whatever your username is, tilde, username, /, and then whatever folder you placed WordPress in. I put mine in a folder called WordPress, so I'm just typing WordPress. And then I'm going to press enter. What this will do by default is it will take you directly to the installation script, because the way that WordPress is written, it recognizes if you try to hit the folder, the index.php page runs a script that detects that it's not installed yet. It has no connection to a database, and it doesn't have anything going. All right, so at this point, it's telling you that you do need to have access to the name of your database, your username, password, and database host. And I'll give you all that information in a second. And then we're being told in advance that we're going to take that information that allows you to log into the database, and it gets stored in this file in the root directory of your WordPress installation. However, in order for that to correctly work, that will have to be offloaded to our local machine, stored as a file, and then re-uploaded. And I'll walk you through that process. So go ahead and click Let's Go. And the database name, you can name it whatever you want, but remember the rules for our server. You have to preface it with your username and an underscore. You guys remember what I called mine? Is it, yeah, WP1. Then I'll put in my username. And this would be the username for the database, and I want to be really clear on that. I set up your account so that your databases have the same password as your regular FTP account. Bad choice for security. If you were doing a live production website, which you are doing for your clients, your database password should be different, your WordPress password should be different, your FTP passwords, every password should be different. And yes, you'll probably have to write them down on a Post-it or something, or find a way to chronicle them. Because if you have them all the same, a hacker just needs to crack one. Once they're on your file system, your whole site's down. You want to, maybe they're clever and can figure them all out, but you want to slow them down at least a little bit. Okay, so yeah, believe it or not, password is my password. Oh, and here I'm doing the wrong thing. The database host is localhost. All that simply means is that the database server is running on the same machine as the web server. Okay? Please note, though, that that's not always the case. So if your database server is on a different machine, which you can do, you have to know how to be able to access that database machine from the Linux machine we're connecting to. Okay? The last little field is a table prefix, and the reason that this exists is in the old days when you would get hosting, either like private hosting like what we're doing ourselves or commercial hosting, very often it would be expensive to add databases. They usually would give you 1 or 2 or something like that. If you were lucky, 10. But beyond that, you'd have to pay money. So people are like, well, I still want to run a whole bunch of different WordPress sites. How do I work around that? So what they do is they use one database and they run multiple installations off the same database, but they just use different prefixes for all the tables. So this is where you could set it. You could actually delete that if you want. I just always leave it default. Whatever, doesn't matter too much. But if you were doing, let's say, a second installation or a third installation, you might just come in here and type number 1, 2, or 3, or the name of the website, or whatever it happens to be. Go ahead and click Submit, and then you're going to see that it's going to give you a text file here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take all the text. It's already all highlighted. Do a Control-C to copy. Come to your local file system. Open up your Notepad++ or other text editor. Create a new file and paste in that code. What's interesting is if you scroll all the way to the top and start scrolling down, you are going to see here in plain text your username, password, and connection information to get to your database. Yes, my password is password. You guys should know that already anyhow. But not for my real account, just for this junk account. So this is one of those reasons, right? If somebody gets your FTP password or your command line password and they can get to the file system, they can just go right to this file and see what your password is. You see what the security issue is. That's why you want to use different passwords for everything. Yes, there are ways to encrypt it. However, I have dealt with situations where people encrypted this file and then forgot or lost the key to decrypt it. So they, there's little shenanigans you have to pull, but it's still rescuable, but it's quite a pain. All right. So once you have the stuff pasted in here, do a save as. I'm just going to drop it right back on the desktop, and it should be called wp-config.php. wp-config.php. So wp-config.php. And how do I know that? It says so right here. If you did this on a commercial host and you did a one-click install, you would never even see this part. But all of this is happening in the background. It's just all scripted and automated. All right, now back over to FileZilla. And I'm going to go on my desktop here, make sure I'm on the desktop, and then I'm going to right-click in the lower area and just do a refresh, just to make sure that that file pops up. Do I see it? No, I don't see it. Where is it? Yeah, well, there is one in there, but that's not the one I want. So I'm going to go back to Notepad++ here, and I'm going to check my path. It says it's there, right? So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to do a right-click refresh again and start scratching my head as to, oh, there it is. It's way up. All right, so it's sorted by last modified. That's why I couldn't find it. I'll switch to sort by file name, make it more normal. All right, so now on the right-hand side of FileZilla, you want to make sure that you're inside your WordPress folder, because we're going to take this file and replace the pre-existing one that exists. And actually, the pre-existing one is actually named sample, so we're not even replacing it. We're just adding this new one. So let's pull this over and drop it in. Once that upload is complete, you can then return to your browser and hit run the install. So that's what I'm about to do. I'm going to click the button and let it go. Okay. So, yep, install's done. Really, all of the installation was configuring that config file and connecting to the database and make sure it works. At this point, WordPress is already up and running. We're going to put in a site title. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to put in a username. Well, I'm going to keep this simple. I'm going to stick with my regular username. Probably not recommended. In the old days, the admin account, which is what we're creating right now, would be pre-created. The account would be called admin. You know why WordPress stopped doing that? Because everybody knew it, right? So that's one less thing to guess to hack the system. So now you can put in whatever thing you want, and then they have to figure that out too. They also pre-generate a strong password. Well, I'm not a fan of that because I'm doing a demonstration. So this is possibly the weakest password you can possibly use, and you should not be doing this. What I do recommend, though, is whatever you're using, put in something you can remember, and then, yes, I'm confirming the use of a weak password. Thank you very much. Please put in your email address. This is actually optional, but the later versions of WordPress, I think since version 3.5 or something like that, they actually do allow password reset via email, and it's built in. In the past, prior to those versions, if you forgot your admin password, then you really had to go in, wipe it out of the database, create one, hash it, upload it, and then hope it works. And usually it did, but all right. Notice that there is a little discourage search engines from indexing the site. When you're in development mode, I actually recommend that you click that. You really don't care. Eventually, Google will find your stuff even on the school servers, and it will get indexed. Okay, so just be mindful of that. Especially if you share a link and email or on a social network site or something like that, and some people do. All right, so now that I have all my boxes checked and everything filled in, I'm going to go ahead and click install. Boom, that was pretty easy. All right, so now it's up and running, and I'm going to go ahead and click the login button. And then I want you guys to pay very careful attention to the URL here. So it's apollo.gtc.edu, your username, the WordPress folder, and then wp-login.php. The other thing that you can do is you can always type wp-admin, and that will bring you here too. Same difference. Right, go ahead, type in your username or email address and your password, and go ahead and log in. Once you've successfully logged in, most of you at this point know what to do at this point, right? Because you guys are already inside WordPress on your commercial hosts working. But this is the back end of the site. This is the administrative interface where you do all your work. If you want to see what the front end of the site looks like, just come right up here to the top. And now what I usually do is I don't regular click on this. I will right click, open in a new tab, because that way I have both the dashboard and the website up and running at the same time. So this is a successful installation of WordPress running on top of Apollo. And I'm going to end the recording here. And at this point, if we do subsequent videos and demos and stuff, I'll record those too. But I want to make sure that you guys have this capability of knowing how to obtain WordPress, install it, work with a database, connect it all up, get it working. And now you have basically a sandboxed environment in which you can try things and not ruin the real client website that you're working with. So if you guys are like playing with themes, or you're playing with like CSS, or you could mirror your changes here. Or if you just want to experiment, it's all up to you at this point. All right, that ends this video, folks.